Josy, thank you for joining us today and for being willing to be our first person, not just our first person, but our first person of 2019. And I might mention before we begin that Josy's mother, Fanny, passed away just this past year at age 101 and was last with us on the first person program when she was 100 in 2016. And we opened each year for the past number of years with Fanny, and so it's a real honor that we're doing it today with Josy. Thank you, Josy.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Josy, your parents, Fanny and Jacques Eisenberg, were married in early 1938. You were born in March 1939, just months before Germany and Russia attacked Poland, launching the Second World War. Tell us about your parents and their life in Brussels, Belgium in those pre-war years.
Both my parents, as you mentioned, they were married in 1938. They were really newlyweds, but they both had jobs. They were working, they were happy. Life was comfortable for them. They both worked in their trades, and as I mentioned, they were really very comfortable.
Speaking of their trades, tell us about your mother's trade.
Okay. My mom attended, when she was younger, she attended, I guess what you would call a vocational school, where you learned about textiles and clothes designing. And she did that, and she was quite good at it. And apparently, upon graduation, the royal family in Belgium would send some people to this school, and they would pick out a few people to ask them to work for the royal family in Belgium. And as a matter of fact, my mom was chosen. There were only a few students chosen, and she was chosen, and she actually worked for the royal family, which was really a big deal.
A really big deal, I would think.
She was really thrilled about that, and she did that actually till she married my dad.
And speaking of your dad, you have a very interesting thing to share with us about your dad's early career.
That's right. My dad was a tailor, so my mom and dad were both really in the clothing garment business or work. My dad was not always a tailor. He was a violinist, played the violin, and in Europe, and as I'm sure maybe here also in the States, because the movies were silent, so when people went to the movies, they usually hired a quartet, a violinist, a cellist, a few instruments to play music while the movie was being shown, because there was no sound, there was no speaking. So my dad did that for a number of years, and then when the movies became talkies, when they actually had sound, all these people were fired, and they didn't have jobs anymore. So actually they had to find new ways of being able to work and support themselves. And that's when my dad went to tailoring school and learned to be a tailor. So originally, it's interesting, he wasn't really a tailor, he played the violin.
Josy, your parents were married in 1938, as you said. Nazi power in Germany and Austria took an even more ominous turn in late 1938 with Kristallnacht, or what we call the Night of Broken Glass. You were born March 21st, 39, just months before World War II began. Do you know, at that period, do you have any knowledge from your parents as to whether or not they were fearful about the future and your life together with war looming so intensely over Europe?
I don't think they were really aware of what the future might bring. I know there was a lot of apprehension, my understanding. I was too young at the time to realize it, but I know my parents would listen to the radio on a daily basis, and they really didn't know what would happen. And my parents listened mainly to the BBC, and at that time, England was asking people to volunteer, men from Europe to volunteer to come to England and help them to be ready during the war. So they really wanted men to come and volunteer.
And which, of course, you're going to share with us about your father doing
Right.
that. In May 1940, 8 months after Germany attacked Poland, they invaded what we call the Low Countries,
Right.
including Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. Your father responded to that call from the
Yes.
British Army, and he left just before the Germans launched their
Yes.
invasion. Tell us what your father did, how he left, and then what that meant for your mother and for you.
Sure. My dad actually decided to go to England and volunteer for the army, and he and his brother went together, my Uncle Ben, who was also a tailor. Both of them decided they would go over to England and volunteer for the army. They took one of the last ships that was actually able to cross the English Channel. At that time, Dunkirk, many of the British troops were leaving Europe, although my dad wasn't part of the Dunkirk leaving. He was one of the last ships that was able to leave before the war really began. So my dad and my Uncle Ben got to England, and here are these two tailors, and they told the British people, here we are, we want to volunteer. And I think the British didn't really know what to do with them, and so they decided, both tailors, they put them in a factory making British uniforms, probably the best place they could be. And so my dad was really in a factory during that whole time. My mom and I was too young to really understand. I was 13 months old when my dad left. When my dad did leave and he did get to England, my mom, there was no communication because the war had started, and my mom really never knew if my dad ever made it or not. So,
Whether he even made it to England
no,
or not, much less hear anything more.
Right, there was no communication. At that time, Germany was torpedoing boats that were trying to cross the channel, and so my mom really never knew whether he really made it or not. And my mom and I stayed with my maternal grandparents, my mom's parents. We stayed in an attic apartment, very much to ourselves, and we were very much on our own.
And you and your mother would stay together in Brussels under Nazi occupation for several years until 1942,
Yes.
when your mother made the truly profound decision to place you into hiding. Tell us what you can about the events that led up to your mother's decision to place you into hiding, and that, as best you know, what it was like for her to give you up to go into hiding, and what that was like for you.
I think my mom realized that danger was really looming. The Germans had invaded Belgium. As you mentioned, they invaded 4 countries in one day, May 10th, 1940. And my mom, I think, realized that there was a lot of danger, and she wanted to put me into a safe environment. My mom was part of the underground. She was delivering leaflets for all kinds of events that the underground was holding. She was also hiding Jews in our apartment, Jews that were leaving other countries in Europe and Eastern Europe where the Germans had already invaded. And Jews were trying to flee and find safer places. So my mom would put them up for a day or two till they found a safer place to be able to stay. So my mom had kind of connections in the underground. And what she did next, she really hoped to keep me safe. She was afraid to keep me with her in her apartment. And she was able to notify the underground to have people come and pick me up to put me into hiding. Now,
I was going to ask, before you went into hiding, of course, you were with your mother for that period of time. How did your mother make ends meet? And if you don't mind, you shared with me some of the things that were denied to your mother and other
Yes.
Jews, including health care for you.
Sure. Well, once the Germans invaded, really the Nazis kind of took over the government and all the government services. There were no longer any clinics, where mothers would take their children for inoculations and injections and, well care clinics where one would go to make sure your child was in good health. So my mom and I were very much on our own, very much to ourselves. We didn't go out very much. Once the Germans came in, we all had to have identity cards to identify who we were. And if we would walk on the street, a German could just stop you any time and ask you for your ID, your identification card. And of course, the ID card mentioned if you were Jewish or not. And if you were Jewish, it was really up to the Germans to do whatever they wanted at the time, and you usually didn't know what that would be. So we kept very much to ourselves.
You shared with me that even though you were very young, you have some fleeting memories, and there's one in particular that you told me about, incredibly poignant, and you were on a train or a bus with your mother. Will you share that?
Sure. As I mentioned, my mom and I were very much to ourselves. We didn't go out very much. But on one day we did decide, my mom decided to go out with me and to have a tram ride. In Belgium, they didn't have buses. They had trams that were connected electrically, like trolleys, I guess. And so we went for a ride on the trolley, and I was very happy. I was just under 3 years old. And I do remember that while we were on the trolley, we went to sit in the last row. There were rows of seats, 2 seats on each side. And my mom and I went to sit on the last row in the trolley. And while the trolley was riding, a Nazi came on board and asked for everybody's ID so that all the passengers would have their IDs ready, and he would go from row to row inspecting the ID and, whatever he was looking for. My mom was sitting with me in the last row. Oh, this could have started. She was sitting in the last row with me, and she was shaking terribly. And I didn't know why. I was just about 3 years old, and I had no idea why she was shaking. And this Nazi went from row to row asking for people's ID. And he went to every row till he got to the last row, and he turned around and left. And of course, there was a sigh of relief. I didn't know why, but my mom also stopped shaking. And it's something that I just have that image. I guess I'll never forget it. But we were pretty lucky. For some reason, someone was looking over us, and for some reason, he didn't get to the last row or decided not to. So that was
very powerful memory.
Very powerful.
Josy, during that period, what was happening with your grandparents?
My grandfather was in charge of many of the activities in a synagogue, and he would arrange services, he would arrange all the things that needed to be done in a synagogue. My grandmother tended to sick people, and she was also part of, in Judaism, we have a Chevra Kadisha, which it's a group of people that take care of when someone dies. They make sure that all the procedures are taking place. And so she was part of that group, and in a way, it's an honor to be able to take care of a person when they die, and that everything is taken care of for the funeral, for the family, and for the person who's died. And my grandmother, that's what she did. She took care of people when they died.
Josy, the Nazis began deporting Jews in 1942, sending them to concentration camps and to killing camps. What effect do you think that had on your mother's decision to place you into hiding?
Well, I think probably a very great effect. And in fact, she made the decision to be in touch with the underground to make sure that I would be placed in a safe place, into safety.
And when she made that decision, where did she find hiding for you? Tell us about that.
Well, she actually didn't find the hiding. She got in touch with the underground, and the underground decided that it was important. When children were being placed into hiding, parents were not allowed to know where the children were being placed.
It was too dangerous for them to let her know that.
The underground realized that when the Germans would come to your apartment and arrest you, they would ask, where's the rest of your family? Where are your children? Where's your husband? And the underground realized if the parents didn't know, there was no way they'd be able to get the information out of them. So they didn't tell parents where the children were being placed. So my mother made that decision. She gave me to these two strange women who came to our apartment one day to pick me up. And, I realize now how difficult that must have been for her. Having children and grandchildren of my own, I don't think I can imagine myself doing that. But she actually did give me away and put me and knew that I would be in a safe place.
And your mother, not only was she Jewish and at risk because of that, but as you explained, she was also active in the resistance, which was incredibly dangerous.
It was. If she had been caught, I'm sure she would have been killed.
Yeah. So you're handed over to these two strangers, and they take you to, they place you in a convent.
Yes.
And you would stay at that convent for about a year.
Actually, for 6 months.
For 6 months. Tell us what you can about your time in the convent, what you know of that time, and then what led to the decision for you to leave the convent to end up in hiding with a Christian family.
The convent actually was in a place called Bruges. I don't know if any of you know Belgium at all, but Bruges is a beautiful little city full of convents and full of canals. In fact, it's called the Venice of Belgium. It's really beautiful. These two women took me to a convent, and it was full of children. It was more like an orphanage. At that time, food was rationed. People didn't have food for their children. And so they put them in a convent, really, for the time being, hoping that they'd be able to get them out when things were safer and easier and better. So I was placed in this convent, full of children and full of nuns. The nuns were very, very strict. They were very stiff. The nuns, they didn't dress like nuns do today, like we all do. They were dressed like The Sound of Music, and I'm sure most of you have seen The Sound of Music. They were very, very stiff and very strict, and they didn't sing. And
they were not warm and fuzzy like in The Sound of Music,
No, they weren't. And I think to myself, as a 3-year-old, all you want to do is be hugged or held and be held warmly. I played with the children in the courtyard a lot. We all did, and unbeknownst to me, I didn't realize this till after the war, altogether we were 4 Jewish children. There were 3 other Jewish children being hidden there. So there were 4 of us all together. And, we played in the courtyard most of the time. I'd said my rosaries. Kids kind of adapt and do things like the other children do. I did my rosaries in French. And one day, however, the nuns found out that the Nazis were going to come and pick up the 4 Jewish children and place them. We didn't know, well, they didn't know what they were going to do with us. And the nuns, apparently the Nazis did come to the convent to pick us up. And the nuns said, you know, we're not ready yet. The children don't have their clothes together. Come back tomorrow. And indeed, that's what they did. But during the night, the nuns took the 4 of us out and smuggled us out and placed us in homes in Brussels, which is where I was from, where I was born. They placed me with a Catholic family, as you saw in the picture, a man, a father, a mother, and a little girl my age. And I stayed with them there till actually the end of the war. Now, I also want you to realize that in Belgium, probably in other European countries also, if a person was found hiding a Jew, the German, if they found them, would just shoot them on the street. No questions asked, they would just shoot them. So the people who were hiding me and Jews and the nuns, however unfuzzy they were really risking their lives by hiding me and keeping me safe. So I was with this family for the rest of the duration of the war. The man was he was also involved in the underground, but the Germans would often pick him up at night and interrogate him, and he would come back the next morning. I know they would beat him because he was black and blue. He never told on me, and nor some of the other things. I don't know the endeavors he was involved with. But they kept me safe.
They did an incredible thing by taking you in, the
Yes.
kept you safe. What do you remember, though, what your day-to-day life was like, living in their household for that long?
Yeah, I didn't go out very much because I think there was fear. They might be caught, I might be caught. So I was really in the house most of the day with a little girl my age. And, you know, food was rationed in Belgium, as in most of Europe. And people were registered and would pick up food at like a distribution center. You'd go and pick up food once a week, like basics, for however many people were in your household. Now, they were registered for 3 people. I was there illegally. So they would go once a week and pick up food for 3 people.
For 3 people.
But of course, they were shared with me, they fed me, they kept me safe. So I was very fortunate that they did keep me safe.
One of the things you shared with me, knowing the risks they took, the fact that they kept you safe, you recall feeling, though, that you were really not part of the family unit.
Yeah.
A little bit of distance, which, you know, having come from a place where you didn't get a lot of warmth in the convent,
Yes.
because it just wasn't what they did.
Right.
What was that like for you?
You know, it was hard. As you mentioned, they kept me safe. They did. They risked their lives. But, you know, there was a feeling I wasn't part of the family unit. And I think as a 3-year-old, you feel that. And I really felt that very strongly.
Josy, as you said, you stayed with the Dubrocalaire family until the war ended for Belgium,
Yes.
which was in the fall of 1944.
44.
So there was still another 8 months or so, 9 months of war elsewhere in Europe at that
Yes.
time. When the war ended, your Aunt Teresa was able to find you and
Yes.
bring you to her home. What do you know about how that happened? How did she find you, and what that meant to go live now with your aunt?
Sure. My mom had 2 sisters, my 2 aunts, who were both hidden during the war in churches through the underground. And my one aunt, who was older than my mom, had 3 boys, 3 sons, my 3 cousins. They were all hidden in churches together.
Together.
Not, well, actually,
Separately,
separately,
separate places,
but
yeah.
in churches. And once the war ended, once Belgium was liberated, there was like a whole network of the underground, and they knew how to find me. You would go looking for people. There were lists, and you would find relatives and family. And so my Aunt Therese immediately found me at the de Braquelaire's home and brought me to her house. Mm-hmm. And I stayed there with her, with my 3 cousins and my aunt and my uncle, which was just wonderful. Mm-hmm. You know, being with family again after being kind of separated, right, and not being with anybody I knew, it was wonderful.
I have to ask you to tell us about your aunt's husband.
Yes, my aunt's husband, my Uncle Morris, was a very quiet, shy, meek man. And he was actually in the underground during the war. And after the war, he apparently, he won all kinds of awards for being brave and being in the underground and killing Germans. We couldn't believe it, because this was such a quiet, meek man. And so we were all pretty shocked.
He was recognized by the...
He was recognized by the government.
By the government after the war,
yes,
for that. Wow.
He got some honors and some medals, and really, none of us could really believe it, including his wife. So it was amazing. I mean, this was a really very shy man.
And your mother's other sister also survived.
Yes.
So did you spend time with them as well?
Well, I spent time till my mom came back to Belgium in 1945 at the end of the war. But up to that time, I stayed with my aunt and her family.
Yeah, that was about almost a 9-month period of time.
Yes, and it was wonderful, you know, being with family again. They spoiled me rotten, and it was just great.
Well, as you started to tell us about your mother coming back, in what must have seemed like a complete miracle, your mother did survive Auschwitz, yes, which is where she was sent, and I want you to talk with us about that. And after Auschwitz was liberated, she did make her way back and was reunited with you and your sisters. By the time your mom came back, you were 6 years old.
Yes.
You hadn't seen your mother for 3 years. Tell us what you recall and know about your mom coming back, and if you don't mind, a little bit about what your mother went through.
Okay. Very soon after I was put into hiding, my mom and her parents were arrested. The Nazis did come to the apartment and did arrest the 3 of them.
And they were denounced by somebody, right?
You know, I mentioned before there were many wonderful people in Belgium, people who hid me, who saved many Jews. However, there were many people who were not so wonderful. Our next door neighbor denounced my mother, went to the Nazis and actually told them where she lived. And, you know, the Nazis would sometimes pay money for that, or they didn't have to. Some people denounced without getting money. And so there were wonderful people, but there were also people who were not. So my mother was actually denounced, and she was arrested and deported and taken to Auschwitz. Now, being taken to Auschwitz, I don't know if you've gone through the museum yet, or you will probably later, but you'll see there's a railroad car, which is a cattle car, really. It's not a regular passenger train car where people sit and are comfortable. When the Germans deported Jews in Belgium, they put them in cattle cars and took them to concentration camps. Now, most concentration camps, you got there and they killed you. They were killing centers. When they took you to Auschwitz, Auschwitz had a sub-camp, a labor camp called Birkenau, where they made ammunition. And Germans, of course, were very anxious to build up the war machine and to have their ammunition and everything they needed. So when people got to Auschwitz, they actually put them working in a factory. Now, when they got to Auschwitz, you know, being in one of these cattle cars, 150 people, passengers were put in a car. You could only stand, you couldn't sit or do anything. And there were 2 windows for air and 2 buckets, 1 bucket to relieve yourself and 1 bucket for water. Now, 150 passengers were on one train, and you were usually on the train 3 to 4 days, depending how far your country, where you were coming from, to the concentration camp. Auschwitz was about 3-4 days and nights away by train. So by the time the train got to Auschwitz, out of 150 passengers in each cattle car, 40 or 50 people were already dead. Now, my grandfather died on one of the trains, on the train, and my mom and her mother got off the train. Now, as soon as you got off the train, there was what they call a selection. The selection, you know, one line would be for people who were young enough to work in the factory, and the other line would be for people who were maybe older, like my mom, my grandmother, who was around 50, and people holding children. If you were holding a child, the Germans knew that if your child cried, you would go to your child first rather than do your work. So the selection was made. One line was for younger people who'd be able to work, and the other line was for older people, handicapped people, or people holding children. So my mom and her mom were separated immediately, thinking that my grandma was much, much older. And my mom actually went to be with her mother when they were separated, and the German hit her and
Forced her back over.
and forced her back to her line and said, "You go where you're told." And my mom never saw her mother again. My mom was able to work in the factory at Birkenau. They would go there every single day, work the entire day, come back 11 o'clock at night, and have a little bit to eat. They would have liquid with maybe a carrot peel, a potato peel, and they would go to sleep, and then the next day go back to Birkenau.
And I know you don't have time to tell us about a lot of what she endured, but it went on until her liberation in April
Yes.
of 1945. How did she make her way back to Brussels, and what kind of shape, what kind of condition was your mother in?
My mom was taken on a death march. When the Germans realized that the Allies were approaching, they tried to empty some of their concentration camps of prisoners, taking them back to Germany, where they actually had more labor camps and probably could use some of the labor. But they actually marched people on the roads, and they marched. My mom was put on a death march, and they were called death marches because so many people died marching. My mom was actually on a death march from January 1945 until April 1945, when actually the last battle between the Germans and the Russians, which took place on the Elbe River, and that's when actually my mom was liberated by the Russians. The Germans lost then, and the Russians liberated the people who were marching and took them to the Red Cross. My mom, as you mentioned, was in pretty bad shape. She weighed about 65 pounds. She had typhus and meningitis, and she spent a few days with the Red Cross, and the Red Cross eventually brought her back to Brussels. And the first place she went was my aunt's apartment. She knocked on the door, and there I was. So we were reunited, which was
Did you have any idea that
No.
she was coming?
No.
No, she just
Nobody knew.
knocked on the door.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Well, I met, thinking back now, I was pretty young, and it was pretty amazing and pretty shocking.
And then did she move in with your aunt and you for a while?
For a little while, and then we went back to actually our apartment, to our attic apartment where we used to live. Mm-hmm. And then eventually my father came back.
Which in itself is incredible.
Yeah.
So 1946, I believe it was, the following year,
Right.
your father comes back.
My dad couldn't come back right away while he was living in London. The house he was living in was bombed, and he spent 2 years in a hospital. So he really couldn't come back right away. He did eventually come back, and my parents decided that they really did not want to stay in Europe. They wanted to leave after everything that had happened to them, and they actually made applications to come to the United States.
Before you turn to that, Josy, you were old enough that you remember greeting your father.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
My dad came back by ship, and there's a port city in Belgium, it's called Ostend, and we knew that my dad was going to come by ship, crossing the channel and coming to Belgium. And so my mom and I went to this town, the city Ostend, and we waited for the boat to come in with my dad. Mm-hmm. And of course, I didn't know my father. I was 13 months old when he left. And this man came down steps of the ship, and my mom said to me, "There's your father." Mm-hmm. And of course, I didn't know who he was. My mom recognized him. I did not. And there we were together. It was truly a miracle.
And as you said, you decided then they wanted to leave.
They did.
But it would be 1949 before you were able to come to the U.S. How did they rebuild their life? What was that like for those 3 years after your father got back before you came to the United States?
Well, the apartment we lived in, we owned the apartment building. In Europe, there's like one apartment on every floor. So there were 3 floors, and we had the attic apartment during the war. Afterwards, actually, the bottom floor was a store, a tailoring store. And my dad had a tailoring store. He would make suits. In those days, it's not like you can go to Macy's or Bloomingdale's and pick up a suit ready-made. In those days, you went to a tailoring shop. There were bolts of material. You picked your material, the kind of material you wanted for your suit. And my dad, who was the tailor, would fit you and measure you and make a pattern out of paper, then out of material. And this relationship would go on for quite a few weeks till the suit was done. So my dad had a tailoring shop, and he actually made suits. And so he worked, and my mom worked, trying to put your life back together. And my parents did make an application, and it took a number of years to come. Yeah. And my uncle, my dad's brother, came at the same time. The 2 families came together. My uncle, his wife, and 2 daughters, and my parents and me all came together. Yeah.
So here it is, you're 10 years old, you're now in the United States, and starting an entire new life again. What was that like?
Well, it was strange. Mm-hmm. I didn't speak one word of English. And when I came, I was 10 years old, and they put me in first grade because they thought, if you don't speak English, you really don't know very much, which I didn't. And it didn't matter. I wasn't that tall, so it didn't matter, being 10 years old in the first grade.
So you could sit in one of the first grade desks.
Right.
So,
exactly.
But you caught up very quickly.
I caught up. After about 2 weeks, they put me in second grade.
2 weeks later.
2 weeks later, another 2 weeks, third grade. And eventually I caught up, and I graduated with my elementary school. My parents, by the way, very felt very excited about learning English. They immediately started night school and learned all the states, all the presidents, all the capitals, more than I knew. And they were very, very anxious in becoming Americans.
And there were some traumas for you. You shared with me that when you got enrolled into your new school, almost immediately you were beat up by a gang of girls.
Yes.
Tell us what your mom did.
Well, I was beaten up by girls. Girls were waiting for me outside and beat me up. And I didn't know why. I couldn't speak or ask them.
Yeah, this was right after you arrived.
Right after, like the first day or two when I was back in school. My mom, who knew no English whatsoever, went to the principal the next day and wanted to know why. She actually spoke to the principal, which I thought was pretty gutsy.
Mm-hmm.
And it never happened again, but I never knew why it happened.
You, as we mentioned at the very beginning, of course, eventually you would go to Israel to study. Would you mind sharing just a little bit about meeting your husband, Freddie?
Sure. Actually, I went to study in Israel for a year. And, you know, it was in the 50s, late 50s. And in those days, you really didn't go by plane. Planes were very expensive, and they were passenger liners. So I went to Israel for a year, and I studied, and coming back, I went by ship. Going and coming back, I went by ship. And I met the chief radio officer who was socializing with the passengers, I being one of the passengers. And we met, and we were married a year later.
Mm-hmm. And that fabulous photograph from your wedding that we
Yes.
showed, that was on board the
On the
ship,
ship.
wasn't it? Yeah.
We had, while the ship was in port, we actually had the wedding on the ship. There were, 150 guests. We had our friends come, our family and our people. So it was lovely.
Josy, you went on to have a career working with in child welfare, including working with child abuse victims. Mm-hmm. Do you think that what you went through during the Holocaust, what you experienced, did that influence your career choice at all, do you think?
Looking back at it now, I think it did, of course. Yeah. It had a great influence on me. Just wanting to make sure children are safe.
And one thing I definitely want you to talk a little bit about, and you touched on it. When you were in the convent, it was an austere environment. It was just about protecting you. Even at the Dubracalaires, as much as they were there for you, they weren't there for you necessarily emotionally, from what you've shared. And yet you felt, and you've shared this in the past with me, that you felt emotionally very grounded from your early years. Will you talk about that for a minute?
Sure. I've always felt very lucky that I had a very wonderful and close relationship with my grandmother and with my mom. And as you know, I've always felt very strongly that, bonding with a child takes place with a caregiver in the first 3 years of life. Mm-hmm. And, that bonding is so important and so strong, really is kind of a basis for the rest of your life. And I feel that I had that. I had this very strong bonding and love and nurturing from my mother and from my grandmother. So I was very, very lucky. And I think I was really able to sustain a lot of the difficulties that I went through as a child with strangers.
Mm-hmm. Because of that grounding and love that you had in your early years.
I think so.
Josy, you feel ready to take some questions from our audience?
Sure.
Should we do that? So we're going to turn to all of you and see if any of you have some questions you would like to ask Josy. We have a microphone in each aisle. You'll see them here. What we ask is if you do have a question, we ask that you go to the microphone, if you don't mind doing that. And for those of you who are really bashful but have a question, know you can also tweet one or send one later after the program. But please make your question as brief as you can, and I will do my best to repeat it just to make sure we hear it right and everybody in the room hears it, and then Josy will answer it. So, ma'am, I'll start with you.
Did you ever reunite with the other child that you stayed with, that family, later in life?
Question is, did you ever reunite with the Dubracaliers' child?
I did not. My husband and I went to Belgium in 1989. My husband was there working, for his work, and I met him there, and I tried to look up the family and the little girl who was my age, and I found out that they had all died. So I was never able to reconnect with them.
Thank you.
Before my parents left for the States, till 1949, we did have connections.
Until 1940. Okay,
Yes.
okay, all right.
Yes.
This young man.
When your mom knocked on the door, did you or your aunt think that it was a Nazi?
Oh, when your mother came to the door, did you and your aunt think it might have been the Nazis coming?
Well, no, because we knew at that time that the war was over. When I was with my aunt, yeah, the war was over and we didn't worry about the Nazis anymore.
So you knew you were safe at that time. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
Did you speak German? And if yes, did you ever understand what the Nazis were saying?
Did you speak German? Were you able to understand what the Nazis said?
No.
No.
I do not speak German. And, no.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Yes.
Really quick follow-up to that. Did you speak Yiddish?
I do not. I speak Hebrew.
Okay.
I speak Hebrew and I speak French.
Yep.
What was it like living with a family that wasn't the same religion as you and not like practicing the things?
Did you not say that one more time? What was it like living with your family?
No. What was it like what was it like living with someone who didn't practice the same religion as you?
Oh, what was it like living with someone who didn't
Practice the same religion as you.
didn't practice the same religion because you were living with the Dubracaliers? You were living with a Christian family.
Yes.
What was that like for you, Josy?
Well, I really wasn't aware of any kind of religion. They did not go to church, and so I was not involved with any of that. I mean, I was in the convent. In the convent, there was a lot of praying, but when you're 3 years old, you kind of do whatever everybody does around you. I had no idea what it was, nor did I even know what it was to be a Jew.
Until after you were reunited with your
Right.
family, right? Okay.
Did you live with any other family besides the one that took you in?
Did you live with any other families besides the Dubracaliers?
No, I did not. I was just in the convent, and then with the family with the little girl.
So no one else? No one else?
Well, you did live with your aunts. You lived with your aunts'
I
families.
did.
Yes.
My two aunts, after the war, I moved in with my aunt.
Yeah. So there you were with other family members and kids. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Did you have any other options to go to one or another house? Did you have another option to go to
Did you
one
have
house
other
or
options?
another house?
Did you have other options of places to go at that time?
As a 3-year-old,
No, at the end of the war, yes.
at the end of the war, my parents really wanted to come to the United States. And so, I was 10 years old. I kind of did whatever they wanted.
A good rule, yeah. Okay. And we
Did
have
you ever find out what happened to your grandma?
Did you ever find out what happened to your grandma? Well, tell us how you found that out about what happened to your grandma.
Well, we know that she was murdered. as soon as she got to Auschwitz, there was the selection line. You know, people, one side you can work, and the other side, people who couldn't work. And the ones who couldn't work, they really killed them right away.
I think if we can go through these last couple of questions quickly, we can get you all in if we're really quick, okay?
Did your mom ever talk about what it was like working in the factories?
Did your mother ever talk about what it was like at Auschwitz? Yeah.
She really didn't. My mom didn't start talking till she was about 50 years old. She really had a hard time being able to talk. When we came to this country, we had some relatives here, and my mom tried to tell them what had happened, where she had been, and believe it or not, the people said, you know, that was in the past. We don't talk about that now. Those were sad times. Let's talk about the future.
Thank you. Okay.
When you were leaving the convent, did you know that the Nazis were coming, or did the nuns just rush you?
When you were in the convent, did you know the Nazis were coming?
No, I did not.
But the nuns knew, didn't
The
they?
nuns knew. The Nazis came or somehow communicated with them that they were coming to pick us up. Yes, I did not know.
And the nuns got you out of there.
They got us out.
Yeah. Okay. Two last questions. Yes, sir.
How did it feel to be living with the other family and to be like the odd one out?
How did it feel to be living with another family? And did you feel like the odd one out?
I did.
You did, yeah. It's a good question, yeah.
Yeah.
Just even though they were taking care of you, you were still the odd one
right.
out, yeah.
They protected me. They really did.
Okay. And we have one last question here.
Did you ever find out what happened to the nuns
Did
that
you?
were taking care of you?
Well, thank you. Did you ever find out what happened to the nuns?
Well, I didn't know what happened right after, you know, after the war or during the war. I did find out now, I really feel the nuns risked their lives and they really saved quite a few Jewish children. So I thought they needed to be acknowledged for doing what they did in saving Jewish children. And so I wrote to the Belgium government, and I wanted to find the order, because I knew the name of the order of nuns, and I wanted them to really be recognized. And the Belgium government responded in saying that the order is no longer there. And apparently, from what I understand, when there's an order of nuns, and some of them get older and they die, the order kind of decreases. And what they do, they put some nuns in different orders. So that particular order is no longer in existence. And I have not been able to find them.
Thank you, especially to the young people who asked questions. That's a hard thing to do, and I think thank you for doing that. We are about to close our program. We're going to hear from Josy one last time. I just first want to thank all of you for joining us today for our first program of 2019. To remind you that we'll have programs each Wednesday and Thursday until the 8th of August. They begin at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, and I mention that for people that are on the internet watching us because we'll be live streaming these programs through the end of May. And then after that, you have to be here in person with us. But each of our programs, you can see them on the museum's YouTube channel. So we hope that you can come back in person, but otherwise view our programs one way or the other. I'm going to turn back to Josy in just a moment to close our program. When Josy finishes, our photographer Joel, or Lolita, one of them, both of them are here, one of them, Joel, is going to come up on stage and he's going to take a photograph of Josy with you as the background. So we ask that you stay so that we can get that photograph. So when Josy finishes, it's our tradition at first person that our first person gets the last word. And so on that note, I turn it now to Josy to close our program today.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here and coming. I very much appreciate it. I speak to a lot of young students, and I go to many schools to speak. And when I speak there, I like to finish with this particular saying that I have, and I'll read to you. When you go through the museum, you'll see it. It's on the second floor. As you exit the floor, it is written on a wall. And to me, this really signifies everything that the museum is about. I always end my speaking with this. This was written by Martin Mueller, who was a Lutheran minister, who at the beginning of the war was very, very much pro-Hitler, because Hitler promised so many wonderful things for people. After he saw what Hitler was doing, he was very much against him, and he was actually very outspoken and actually put in prison. And this is what he wrote. His name, by the way, is Martin Mueller. First, they came for the socialists. I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionist. I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews. I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And this kind of, to me, really identifies what the museum is all about. You have to learn to be able to say something and do something if you see someone being hurt, being bullied, being made fun of. You could really say something and make a difference. Every single person can make a difference.
Thank you, Josy.
Thank you.